My name is Maya, and I am 25 years old. What I am about to share took place when I was just 13, on a night that fundamentally altered the course of my life. It was August 2013, and Hurricane Katrina was closing in on our coastal town in South Carolina. For days, the media had been tracking the Category 3 storm, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional tempest that would shatter my family that evening. I remember staring into our living room, watching the palm trees outside bowing at impossible angles as the gale intensified. Rain hammered against the glass with such ferocity that it sounded like gravel pelting the windows. My mother was frantically sealing the frames and pulling furniture away from the sliding glass doors, while my father was in the garage hauling sandbags. Meanwhile, my 16-year-old sister Ashley was on the phone with her boyfriend, sobbing about her fear. "Mom, should I move my belongings upstairs?" I asked, noting the water already rising in our backyard. My mother barely looked my way. "Maya, not now, I'm busy." But the weather report said, "Not now." At that moment, Ashley sprinted down the stairs, her face streaked with tears. Mom, I can't sleep in my room. The window is making that awful whistling noise, and the tree branches are scraping against the glass. I'm terrified." My mother instantly abandoned her chores and pulled my sister into a warm embrace. "Oh, honey, of course. We'll figure something out. You shouldn't have to feel scared in your own home." I stood there observing the scene, feeling that familiar, hollow ache in my chest. Ashley was the golden child. She was the one who mattered. Ashley's comfort, Ashley's feelings, Ashley's everything, it all took precedence. "She can sleep in my room," I offered, hoping to be of help. "I'll take her room for the night." My father walked in from the garage, drenched from the rain, just as I spoke. "Nobody is switching rooms," he stated firmly. "Ashley needs her own space. She's prepping for her SATs and needs her study materials nearby." "But Dad, the hurricane." "Maya, enough," my mother snapped. "Your sister is going through a tough time. Her boyfriend might be moving away next year, and she's stressed about college apps. She needs stability." My face flushed with a mixture of confusion and hurt. But where will she sleep if not in her room or mine? My parents exchanged a look, a familiar, ominous glance that always signaled bad news for me. My mother turned to me, her expression a mix of apology and resolve. "Maya, you're going to need to give Ashley your room for a while." I blinked in shock. "What? Where am I supposed to sleep?" "We'll set something up in the garage," my father said, refusing to meet my gaze. "Just temporarily, until the storm passes and we can find a permanent solution." The garage? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, there's a hurricane coming. The garage floods every time we have a heavy downpour." "Don't be dramatic," my mother said sharply. "We'll put your mattress on cinder blocks. You'll be fine for a few nights." I wasn't being dramatic, I was being realistic. Our garage had flooded 3 times in the previous 2 years during routine rainstorms. In a hurricane, it would essentially become a swimming pool. "Please," I begged, my eyes stinging with tears. "I'll sleep on the couch or in the hallway. Just don't make me sleep in the garage during a hurricane." Ashley looked uneasy for a fleeting moment, but my mother's hand on her shoulder seemed to remind her of her place in the family hierarchy. "Maya, stop being selfish. Your sister needs this." Over the next hour, as the wind shrieked and the rain intensified, I watched my father drag my mattress, my clothes, and my meager possessions into the garage. He placed the mattress on 4 cinder blocks, raising it maybe 8 inches off the concrete. My mother provided a single thin blanket and a flashlight with fading batteries. "This is just for tonight," she insisted, though her eyes betrayed her. "Tomorrow, we'll figure something better out." By 8:00 p.m., the hurricane was at its peak. The power had failed, and I could hear debris crashing outside. Water was already seeping beneath the garage door, forming a puddle that gradually expanded across the floor. I sat on my mattress, hugging my knees and trying to suppress my sobs as I listened to my family inside. I could hear them talking and laughing in the living room. My father had set up the camping lanterns, and they were likely playing cards or board games to pass the time, as we always did during storms. Only this time I was excluded. By 9:00 p.m., the water in the garage was 3 inches deep. It was lapping at the cinder blocks, and I knew it would reach the mattress soon. I was cold, damp, and terrified. Every thunderclap made me jump, and each gust of wind that slammed against the door convinced me it would blow in. I tried the door connecting the garage to the house, but it was locked. I knocked lightly, then harder. "Mom, the water is getting really high out here." No answer. Either they couldn't hear me over the storm or they were choosing to ignore me. I pounded with my fist. "Please, the garage is flooding." Still nothing. The water hit the mattress. I stood up, balancing on the soggy surface, and shouted louder. "Dad, the water is on the mattress now. Please let me in." Finally, footsteps approached. The door opened a crack, revealing my father's face illuminated by the warm glow of the lanterns. Behind him, I could see my mother and Ashley sitting comfortably on the couch, wrapped in blankets. "Maya, stop making such a fuss," he said, his voice cold. "You're fine, just deal with it." "But Dad, I'm standing in water. The mattress is soaked and I'm freezing. Your sister needs her space." He bellowed. For the first time, I saw something in my father's eyes that truly scared me. It wasn't just annoyance. It was pure rage directed at me, his 13-year-old daughter, for daring to complain about being locked in a flooding garage during a Category 3 hurricane. "Your sister comes first," he shouted. "She has always come first, and she always will. Now stop bothering us and figure it out yourself." He slammed the door, and I heard the lock click. I stood there in the dark, water up to my ankles, listening as my own father made it clear that my sister, who was 3 years older and perfectly capable of handling some noise, mattered more than my safety. At that moment, something broke inside me, not with a shout, but quietly and completely. The final thread of hope that my parents loved or valued me snapped. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from a profound rage and hurt. I was 13, and my parents had just demonstrated that I was worth less to them than my sister's room preference. The water was up to my shins. The garage door rattled violently. I knew I had to act, or I might actually die, not because of the storm, but because my parents deemed my sister's comfort more valuable than my life. I tried the door to the house again. Locked. I attempted to use the automatic opener, but the power was out, and the manual release was submerged somewhere in the water. I was trapped. Then I remembered Uncle Arthur. He was my father's younger brother, living about 30 minutes away. They had experienced a falling out years ago and rarely spoke. Uncle Arthur had never married or had children, but the few times I'd met him, he had been kind. He asked about school, remembered my birthday, and treated me like I mattered. I had his number saved in my phone from the previous Christmas when he told me, "If you ever need anything, kiddo, you call me. No matter the time, no matter what it is, you call." With trembling hands, I pulled my phone from my pocket. By some miracle, it still had battery and 1 bar of signal. I dialed Uncle Arthur. He answered on the second ring. "Hello." "Uncle Arthur," my voice emerged as a sob. "It's Maya, I need help." "Maya, what's wrong? Where are you?" I could hear his immediate concern. "I'm at home, in the garage. My parents locked me out here because Ashley wanted my room, and it's flooding, and I'm standing in the water, and they won't let me back in." A terrible, long silence followed. Then, in a voice I had never heard, low and dangerous, Uncle Arthur said, "You stay on the phone with me. I'm coming to get you right now. Do you understand? I'm coming to get you out of there." "But the hurricane." "I don't give a damn about the hurricane. You're a child and you're in danger. I'm leaving right now." True to his word, I heard a door slam and an engine start. "Maya, honey, keep talking to me. Tell me exactly where you are in the garage." I told him everything as I listened to him driving, the windshield wipers slapping at full speed, hearing him curse at the storm and my parents alike. He kept me talking, focused on his voice rather than the rising water. "I'm about 10 minutes out," he said. "The roads are bad, but I'm coming. Hold on, sweetheart." When I finally heard his truck pull into the driveway, I wanted to weep with relief. I heard him exit, his boots pounding against the porch, and then his voice, muffled but furious, shouting at someone. The manual release on the garage door was yanked from the outside, and it began to rise. Rain and wind poured in, but I didn't care. Uncle Arthur was there, soaked, his face a mask of fury as he waded through the water. "Come here," he said, scooping me up like I weighed nothing and carrying me toward his truck. Then I saw them. My parents stood in the doorway, framed by the warm light from inside. My mother's hand was over her mouth, and my father's face was flushed with anger. "You have no right," my father shouted over the wind. "She's my daughter." Uncle Arthur turned, and the look he gave my father could have melted steel. "She's a child, your child, and you locked her in a flooding garage during a hurricane." He was trembling with rage, still holding me against his chest. "She was fine. She was being dramatic." My mother called out, though she sounded uncertain. "She's standing in a foot of water, Susan. She's been out here for hours." She called me terrified because her own parents wouldn't let her inside. Uncle Arthur took a step toward them, his body vibrating with intensity. "You could have killed her. For what? So Ashley could have a quieter room." Ashley appeared behind them, looking pale and briefly guilty before my mother pulled her into a protective embrace. "We were going to check on her," my father said, his voice lacking conviction. "When?" Uncle Arthur demanded. "When the water reached the ceiling. When she drowned in your garage." I was shivering violently, and Uncle Arthur seemed to remember I was there. He turned back to the truck. "I'm taking her. Don't call me. Don't come looking for her. If you come near her, I will call the police and report what you did tonight. Do you understand me? You can't just take my daughter," my father shouted. Uncle Arthur opened the passenger door, tucked me inside, and wrapped his jacket around me. He turned to my parents one final time. "I already did. And if you had any decency, you'd be grateful someone cares enough about her to ensure she doesn't die in your garage." He climbed into the truck, and we drove away. I watched through the rear window as my parents grew smaller in the distance until we turned the corner and they vanished. Uncle Arthur's house was further inland, away from the worst of the flooding. It was a modest two-bedroom home, but it was warm, dry, and safe. He brought me inside, gave me dry clothes that were much too large, and made me hot chocolate while the hurricane raged. "You're staying here," he stated, not as a question. "For as long as you need, for as long as you want." "They're going to want me back," I whispered, though I wasn't even sure of that. Uncle Arthur's jaw tightened. "Let them try." His expression softened, and he sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Maya, what happened tonight wasn't okay. It was never okay. I need you to understand something. None of this is your fault, not any of it." I began to cry, truly weep for the first time that night. All the fear and rejection poured out, and Uncle Arthur sat there, occasionally squeezing my hand. "Why don't they love me?" I asked. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," Uncle Arthur said fiercely. "You did nothing wrong. Some people are broken in ways that have nothing to do with their children. Your parents' treatment of you speaks volumes about them, not you. Do you understand me?" I nodded, though I didn't fully believe him yet. How could I? I was 13, and my parents had just proven that my sister's minor inconvenience was worth more than my safety. But Uncle Arthur meant it, and over the months and years, he proved it in countless ways. My parents did try to reclaim me. 3 days after the hurricane, they showed up at Uncle Arthur's house. My father blustered about rights and kidnapping, while my mother wept, claiming they had made a mistake and were worried sick. I refused to leave my room. Every time I thought about returning, I remembered standing in that flooded garage, pleading for help while my father insisted my sister came first. Uncle Arthur handled them. I heard raised voices and my father threatening legal action, but Arthur had taken photos of the flooded garage, kept a record of my phone call, and had already consulted an attorney. He made it clear that if they pushed, he would fight back, and the events of that night would become a matter of public record. They left without me. Ashley called me once, 2 weeks later. "Maya, Mom and Dad are really upset. When are you coming home?" "I'm not," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous. You're 13. You can't just decide to live somewhere else. Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. "That night, when Dad was moving my stuff, you could hear me knocking and calling for help. Why didn't you speak up?" There was a long silence. "It wasn't my fault. I didn't know it would flood that badly." "But you knew I was out there. You heard me and you didn't care. You're being dramatic." I hung up and she never called again. Uncle Arthur became my legal guardian through a process I didn't fully grasp at the time. There were court dates, lawyers, and social workers. My parents fought it at first, but not with much conviction. I think part of them was relieved to be rid of me. I was the daughter who didn't fit their narrative, who didn't perform like Ashley, and who required actual care rather than just being easy. So they let me go. Uncle Arthur took me in not as an obligation, but as a joy. He enrolled me in a new school, learned to braid hair via YouTube tutorials to help me in the mornings, and attended every parent-teacher conference, school play, and band concert. He taught me how to change a tire, manage money, and stand up for myself. Above all, he demonstrated what unconditional love looked like. It looked like driving through a hurricane to save someone. It looked like patient encouragement when I struggled with algebra. It looked like sitting with me until 2:00 a.m. when nightmares about the garage kept me awake. "You're going to do amazing things, Maya," he would tell me. "You're smart, strong, and kind. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." Slowly, painfully, I began to believe him. I threw myself into my studies, partly because I loved learning, but also because I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove that I was worth more than how they had treated me, that discarding me had been their loss, not mine. I made the honor roll every semester, joined the debate team, volunteered at the animal shelter, started a coding club, and was elected student council president. Throughout it all, Uncle Arthur was there, proud of every accomplishment. "That's my girl," he'd say, and I would feel a warmth in my chest I had never experienced with my parents. When it came time for college, Uncle Arthur and I spent hours researching schools and scholarships. He made it clear that money was no object, but I was determined to earn as much scholarship funding as I could. I never wanted anyone to say I had gotten anywhere because of handouts. I was accepted into Stanford on a full academic scholarship. The day the letter arrived, Uncle Arthur actually wept, tears streaming down his face as he hugged me tight. "I knew you could do it, I always knew." Somehow my parents found out. My mother called me for the first time in 4 years. "Maya, we heard about Stanford. That's wonderful, honey. We're so proud of you." The casual tone, as if the past 4 years hadn't happened and as if she had any right to claim pride in my achievements, made my blood boil. "Don't," I said coldly. "You don't get to be proud of me. You didn't raise me. You threw me away in a flooding garage because Ashley wanted my room. Uncle Arthur raised me. He gets to be proud. You get nothing." "Maya, we made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected her. "You made choices that told me exactly what I was worth to you. Don't call again." I hung up and blocked the number. At Stanford, I thrived. I majored in computer science and economics, a double major because apparently I enjoyed challenging myself. I kept up with the relentless workload. During the summers, I interned at various tech companies and I cultivated friendships, genuine ones, with people who appreciated me for who I truly was. I even dipped my toes into dating, though intimacy proved challenging when you're carrying trust issues the size of a hurricane. Uncle Arthur visited every few months, always armed with care packages and a repertoire of dad jokes. "How are you doing, kiddo?" He would ask. I'd pour it all out, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. He listened with that same patient, unwavering attention he had always given me. "I'm proud of you, you know," he remarked during my sophomore year. "Not just for the grades or the internships. I'm proud of the woman you've become. You remained kind despite everything that happened to you. You're strong without hardening your heart. You've turned your pain into purpose." "I learned from the best," I replied, and I meant every word. During my senior year, Uncle Arthur's health began to fail. He had always been active and robust, but he started struggling to breathe. Tests confirmed advanced lung cancer, a consequence of his younger years as a smoker finally catching up with him. I wanted to drop out to care for him, but he wouldn't hear of it. "You have 1 semester left. You finish it. I'll still be here when you graduate," he promised. He barely made it. I could see the weight he had lost and the labor in every breath. Yet he attended my graduation, oxygen tank in tow, and cheered louder than anyone when they called my name. "Stanford graduate," he whispered afterward, clutching my hands in his frail ones. "A Stanford graduate. Damn, I'm lucky I lived to see this." "Uncle Arthur, I need to tell you something," he interrupted, his voice dropping into a serious tone. "I've been updating my will. When I'm gone, everything goes to you, the house, my savings, my investments, everything." I don't want to talk about this, I said, tears already welling up. We have to, he insisted gently. Maya, I need you to know that you gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Raising you, watching you grow, being part of your life, was the greatest thing I ever did. You made me matter. You always mattered, I choked out. So did you, he said. I just wish your parents had been wise enough to see it. He passed away 3 months later, peacefully in his sleep. I was there, holding his hand and telling him about the new job offer I'd received from a tech firm in San Francisco. I like to think he heard me. I hope he did. The funeral was a small affair. Just me, a few of his friends, and some distant relatives I barely knew. I stood at the front to deliver the eulogy, speaking of the man who had saved my life in every way a person can be saved. And that was when they appeared. My parents and Ashley slipped into the back row during my speech. I saw them, my mother, aged and graying, my father wearing that same stern expression, and Ashley, now 28, dressed in expensive clothes that shouted success. I faltered, my voice catching, but then I recalled everything Uncle Arthur had taught me about strength and self-worth. I finished the eulogy without acknowledging them. After the service, they approached me at the reception. My mother reached out to hug me, but I stepped back. Maya, she said, her eyes glistening. We're so sorry for your loss. Arthur was a good man. He was the best man, I corrected. He was the only parent I ever had that mattered. My father's face reddened. That's not fair, we tried. You locked me in a flooding garage during a hurricane, I said, my voice low and steady so only they could hear. Because Ashley wanted my room, you told me she came first. You chose her comfort over my safety, over my life. So no, you didn't try, you gave up, you threw me away and Uncle Arthur picked me up. We made a mistake, my mother whispered. We know that now, we've regretted it every day since. Good, I said simply. You should. Ashley stepped forward, her expression a cocktail of guilt and defensiveness. Maya, it's been 12 years. Don't you think it's time to move past this? Family should forgive family. I looked at her, the woman who used to be my sister, the one I had once looked up to despite everything. You knew I was out there that night. You heard me knocking, you heard me crying, and you did nothing because it benefited you. That's who you are, Ashley, and I don't forgive people who would let me drown for their own convenience. That's not fair, she protested. Life isn't fair, I cut her off. I learned that when I was 13, standing in rising water, begging my own father to let me in while he told me you came first. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual mourners to thank for coming. I walked away from them, and it felt like slamming a door that should have been locked years ago. A week later, I attended the official reading of Uncle Arthur's will at his lawyer's office. I arrived early, dressed for business, still feeling the numbness of grief. I wasn't expecting to find my parents and Ashley in the waiting room. What are you doing here? I asked, unable to mask my hostility. My mother looked uneasy. Mr. Whittaker invited us. He said there were matters in Arthur's will that concerned the family. Family, as if they had any right to that word in connection with Uncle Arthur. Mr. Whittaker called us into his office. We sat on opposite sides, me on one, them on the other, like warring factions. The lawyer was an elderly man with kind eyes who had known Arthur for years. Thank you all for coming, he began. I'll get straight to the point. Arthur Sterling left a very specific will with very specific instructions. He opened a folder and pulled out several documents. First, to Maya Chin, Arthur leaves his entire estate. This includes his home, valued at approximately $400,000, his savings and investment accounts, totaling $2–3 million, his vehicle, and all personal possessions. I heard my mother gasp. Across from me, Ashley's eyes went wide. $2–3 million, my father exclaimed. Arthur had that kind of money. Arthur Sterling was a highly successful investor, Mr. Whittaker said calmly. He lived modestly but invested wisely. Most of his wealth was accumulated over the past 30 years through careful financial planning. My mother's hands were shaking. I could see her doing the math, realizing the implications. But he never said anything. We had no idea. Why would he tell you? I asked coldly. You weren't part of his life or mine. There's more, Mr. Whittaker continued. Arthur left specific instructions and messages for certain family members. He pulled out several sealed envelopes. The first was for his brother, David Sterling. He handed it to my father, who opened it with trembling fingers. I watched his eyes scan the single page, his expression shifting from confusion to shock and finally to fury. "What does it say?" my mother asked. My father's voice was strained as he read aloud. "David, you were my brother and I loved you despite your flaws. But what you did to Maya that night during the hurricane was unforgivable. You locked a 13-year-old child in a flooding garage to appease your other daughter's whims. You chose convenience over safety, preference over protection. You failed as a father in the most fundamental way possible. I took Maya not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because she deserved someone who recognized her worth. She has become the greatest joy of my life, and you missed every moment of watching her grow into an extraordinary woman because you were too blind to see what was right in front of you. You lost a daughter who would have made you proud. I gained one who made my life meaningful. I hope that in your old age, you think about that choice and regret it every single day. The money I'm leaving Maya represents 12 years of child support you never paid, invested, and grown. You gave me your daughter, I gave her a future. We are not even." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother had her hands over her mouth, sobbing. My father's face was ashen, the letter crumpled in his fist. "There is one for you as well, Susan." I threw myself into my studies, balancing a heavy workload with summer internships at various tech firms. I cultivated genuine friendships, surrounding myself with people who appreciated me for who I actually was. I even tried dating, though it proved difficult to navigate romantic connections while carrying the weight of deep-seated trust issues. Uncle Arthur visited every few months, always arriving with care packages and his signature dad jokes. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" he would ask. I would share everything with him, the triumphs, the failures, and the moments that felt like too much. He listened with that same patient, steady focus he had always offered me. During my sophomore year, he told me, "I'm proud of you, you know. Not just for your grades or those internships. I'm proud of the person you've become. You've remained kind despite everything you endured. You're strong without being bitter. You turned your pain into purpose." "I learned from the best," I replied, and I meant every word. By my senior year, Uncle Arthur's health began to fade. He had always been active and robust, but suddenly he struggled to catch his breath. Tests confirmed advanced lung cancer, a consequence of the smoking habit from his younger days finally catching up to him. I begged to drop out and return home to care for him, but he refused. "You have one semester left. You finish it. I'll still be here when you graduate," he insisted. He was, but only just. It was agonizing to see how much weight he had lost and how difficult every breath was for him. Yet he made it to my graduation, oxygen tank in tow, and cheered louder than anyone when they called my name. "Stanford graduate," he whispered afterward, his thin hands gripping mine. "A Stanford graduate. Damn, I'm so lucky I got to see this." "Uncle Arthur, I need to tell you something," he interrupted, his tone suddenly grave. "I've been updating my will. When I'm gone, everything goes to you. The house, my savings, my investments, all of it. I don't want to talk about this," I said, tears already blurring my vision. "We have to," he gently insisted. "Maya, I want you to know that you gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Raising you, watching you grow, being part of your life, that was the greatest thing I ever did. You made me matter." "You always mattered," I choked out. "So did you," he replied. "I just wish your parents had been smart enough to realize it." He passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months later. I was by his side, holding his hand and telling him about the job offer I had just received from a tech company in San Francisco. I like to think he heard me. I hope he did. The funeral was intimate, attended only by me, a handful of his friends, and some distant relatives I barely recognized. I stood at the front to deliver the eulogy, speaking about the man who had saved my life in every sense of the word. That was when they appeared. My parents and Ashley slipped into the back row during my speech. I saw them, my mother, aged and graying, my father, wearing that same stern expression, and Ashley, now 28 and draped in expensive clothes that shouted success. My voice faltered for a heartbeat. Then, I remembered every lesson Uncle Arthur had taught me about self-worth and resilience. I finished the eulogy without giving them so much as a glance. After the service, they approached me at the reception. My mother reached out to hug me, but I stepped back. "Maya," she said, her eyes glistening, "we're so sorry for your loss. Arthur was a good man. He was the best man," I corrected. "He was the only parent I ever had who mattered." My father's face turned crimson. "That's not fair. We tried." "You locked me in a flooding garage during a hurricane," I stated flatly, keeping my voice low enough that only they could hear. "Because Ashley wanted my room. You told me she came first. You prioritized her comfort over my safety, over my life. So no, you didn't try. You gave up. You threw me away, and Uncle Arthur was the one who picked me up." "We made a mistake," my mother whispered. "We know that now. We've regretted it every single day." "Good," I said simply. "You should." Ashley stepped forward, looking a mix of defensive and guilty. "Maya, it's been 12 years. Don't you think it's time to move past this? Family should forgive family." I stared at her, the girl who used to be my sister, the one I had once idolized. "You knew I was out there that night. You heard me knocking. You heard me screaming. You did nothing because it was convenient for you. That is who you are, Ashley, and that is who you have always been. I don't forgive people who would let me drown for their own comfort." "That's not fair," she cried. "Life isn't fair," I countered. "I learned that when I was 13, standing in water in a garage, begging my own father to open the door while he told me you came first. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual mourners to thank for coming." I walked away from them, and it felt like slamming a door that should have been locked years ago. A week later, I attended the official reading of Uncle Arthur's will at Mr. Patterson's downtown office. I arrived early, dressed for business, still feeling the numbness of grief. I was stunned to find my parents and Ashley waiting in the lobby. "What are you doing here?" I asked, unable to mask my hostility. My mother looked uneasy. "Mr. Whittaker invited us. He said there were matters in Arthur's will that concerned the family." Family, as if they had any right to claim that word in connection with Uncle Arthur. Mr. Whittaker ushered us into his office, and we sat on opposite sides of the table, like opposing armies. He was an elderly man with kind eyes who had known Arthur for decades. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I'll get straight to the point. Arthur Sterling left a very specific will with very precise instructions." He opened a folder and withdrew several documents. "First, to Maya Chin, Arthur leaves his entire estate. This includes his house, valued at approximately $400,000, his savings and investment accounts totaling $2–3 million, his vehicle, and all personal possessions." I heard my mother gasp. Across from me, Ashley's eyes widened. $2–3 million, my father stammered. Arthur had that kind of money. "Arthur Sterling was a highly successful investor," Mr. Whittaker explained calmly. "He lived modestly but invested wisely. The bulk of his wealth was built over 30 years through careful planning." My mother's hands trembled. I could see her tallying the numbers, finally grasping what this signified. But he never said anything. We had no idea." "Why would he tell you?" I asked coldly. "You weren't part of his life or mine." "There is more," Mr. Whittaker continued. "Arthur also left specific instructions and messages for certain family members." He produced several sealed envelopes. The first was for my father, David Sterling. He opened it with shaky hands, and I watched his expression shift from confusion to pale shock, then to a burning red. "What does it say?" my mother demanded. My father's voice cracked as he read aloud. "David, you were my brother, and I loved you despite your flaws. But what you did to Maya that night during the hurricane was unforgivable. You locked a 13-year-old in a flooding garage to appease your other daughter's whims. You chose convenience over safety and preference over protection. You failed as a father in the most fundamental way. I took Maya not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because she deserved someone who saw her worth. She has become the greatest joy of my life, and you missed every moment of her growth because you were too blind to see what was right in front of you. You lost a daughter who would have made you proud. I gained one who gave my life meaning. I hope in your old age you dwell on that choice and regret it every single day." The money I'm leaving Maya represents 12 years of child support you never paid, invested, and grown. You gave me your daughter, I gave her a future. We are not even. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother sobbed into her hands, while my father stood there, face ashen, clutching the crumpled letter. "There is one for you as well, Susan, Mr. Whittaker said, handing an envelope to my mother. She opened it with great difficulty. Her voice broke as she read. "Susan, you stood by and watched your husband endanger your child. You made excuses. You prioritized one daughter's comfort over the other's life. That is not a mistake. That is a choice. Maya needed a mother that night and every night after, and you failed her. I became her family because you abdicated your role. She graduated from Stanford with honors and has a promising career. She is kind, brilliant, and strong, and you know none of this because you threw her away. Live with that." Ashley had turned ghost white. Is there one for me?" Mr. Whittaker nodded and handed her an envelope. She read it silently, but I saw tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked at me with an expression of such raw sorrow that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What did it say?" I asked, my voice hard. She swallowed hard and whispered. "It says, Ashley, your sister was locked out in a hurricane so you could have her room. You heard her crying for help and did nothing. You benefited from her removal and never questioned it. You took the attention, the resources, and the support that should have been shared. You built your success on the foundation of Maya's exclusion. I hope you understand that every achievement you celebrate, Maya earned twice over with half the support. She is twice the person you are with half the advantages you had. That is who your sister is, and you will never know her because you never deserved her." The room remained silent, save for my mother's muffled weeping. Mr. Whittaker cleared his throat. Arthur also left a final message for Maya to be read aloud in front of everyone present. He handed me an envelope addressed in Uncle Arthur's familiar handwriting. My hands were steady as I opened it, my eyes filling with tears at the sight of his script one last time. "My dearest Maya," I began, my voice thick with emotion. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope you know that my final thoughts were of you and how grateful I was for every day we shared. You weren't just my ward, you were my daughter in every way that mattered. I never had children of my own, but I had the privilege of raising you, which was the greatest honor of my life." I paused to wipe my eyes, fully aware of my parents watching me. "I'm leaving you everything because you deserve it, but also because I want you to understand your worth. You are worth $2.3 million. You are worth a home, a future, and security. But more than that, you are worth love, care, and protection, everything you should have received from your birth family but didn't. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than worthy again. Not your parents, not your sister, not anyone." My voice wavered, but I forced myself to continue. "To your parents, I say this in front of you. Maya is the finest thing you ever created, and you discarded her for nothing. You traded a daughter who would have loved you unconditionally for the convenience of not telling your other daughter no. That is your loss, not hers. She doesn't need you, she never did after that night. But you need to know what you lost so that you live the rest of your lives with that knowledge." I looked up at them. My mother was sobbing openly now. My father's eyes were wet, his jaw tight. Ashley looked like she wished she could vanish. Finally, I continued, my voice gaining strength. "Maya, my darling girl, you are going to do incredible things. You already have. This money is just a tool. Buy a house, start a company, support causes you believe in, live a big, full, beautiful life. And every time your parents see or hear of your success, they will know they had nothing to do with it. They will know they were wrong. They will know what they lost. That is its own kind of justice. I love you, kiddo. I always will. Make me proud, though you already have. Love, Uncle Arthur." I finished and carefully refolded the letter. When I looked up, my mother stared at me with such profound regret that it would have been satisfying had it not been so entirely pointless. "Maya," she whispered. We. "What?" I asked, my voice calm. "Sorry, you made a mistake. You wish you could go back," she nodded frantically. "Yes, all of that, Maya, if we could just." "No," I said firmly. "No second chances, no reconciliation, no family reunions. You made your choice 12 years ago, and I have made mine now. You taught me that I was worth less than Ashley's comfort. Uncle Arthur taught me that I am worth $3 million and a lifetime of unconditional love. I am going with his assessment. But we're your parents, my father said, finally finding his voice. No, I corrected. You are the people who created me. Uncle Arthur was my parent. He is the one who raised me, sacrificed for me, and loved me. You are just strangers who share my DNA. That's not fair, Ashley sobbed. We were young, we didn't understand. You were 16, I interrupted. Old enough to know that locking someone out during a hurricane was dangerous. Old enough to speak up. Old enough to care. You didn't because it benefited you not to. That isn't youth, that is character. I stood up, gathering my things. Mr. Whittaker, thank you for handling this. Please forward the paperwork to my address. I assume I have some things to sign. Yes, we can arrange that, he said, looking at me with sympathy. I turned to my parents one last time. I am using Uncle Arthur's money to establish a foundation for displaced children and teens, kids who have been discarded by their families and need a second chance. I am going to ensure they have what I had, someone who sees their worth. I am naming it the Arthur Sterling Foundation for Found Family. So, every time you hear that name, every time you read about the work it does, you will remember the daughter you threw away and the man who proved you wrong. My mother reached for me. Please, Maya, don't do this. We can fix it. There is nothing to fix, I said, stepping back. You broke something 12 years ago that cannot be repaired. I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing this because you are not my family anymore. You haven't been for a very long time. I walked out of that office with my head held high, leaving them behind with their regret, their guilt, and their loss. I never looked back. That was 3 months ago. Today, I am sitting in my new office, the one I purchased with a portion of Uncle Arthur's inheritance, finalizing the paperwork for the foundation. We have already helped 7 teenagers find safe homes and educational access. We have paid for 3 children to attend college. We have provided therapy and support, and most importantly, the message that they matter. My parents have tried to reach me 47 times through calls, emails, texts, and even a letter from their lawyer. I have ignored every single one. Ashley has tried as well, sending lengthy messages about how sorry she is and how she wants us to be sisters again. I delete them without reading past the first line. Some might call me cruel for refusing to forgive, arguing that family is forever. But those people were never locked in a flooding garage at 13 while their father shouted that their sister came first. They never spent their childhood being taught, through actions if not words, that they were less valuable, less loved, and less worthy. I learned from Uncle Arthur that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you. It's about who drives through a hurricane to save you. It's about who sits with you through nightmares, celebrates your victories, and loves you unconditionally. My parents were none of those things. Uncle Arthur was everything. With his money and his legacy, I am going to ensure other kids know they are worth saving, too. Because every child left out in the cold deserves someone to open the door. Every kid who has been dismissed or devalued deserves someone to recognize their worth. Every daughter or son who has been thrown away deserves to know they matter. Uncle Arthur taught me that, and now I will spend the rest of my life teaching it to others. My name is Maya Chin. I am 25 years old. I am worth $3 million. But I learned from the best that my true value has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with the love I received from the man who became my real father, the one who proved that family is a choice, not an obligation. I choose to honor his memory by being that person for someone else. That is the greatest revenge I could ever ask for. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from.